Today I'm going to be talking about a topic that was requested quite a bit ago, and we're going to be talking about being a cycle breaker. And I'm specifically also going to talk about being a cycle breaker in the business space. So if you're new here, my name is Eva and I am a shamanic heart guide. I love supporting people to reconnect back to their hearts, which to me represents your intuition, your power, and your authenticity. It's about living in a way that honors your gifts and your natural passions, and then allows you to show up and contribute to the world in a way that is meaningful for you, but also is supportive and serves the collective as well. So if you're interested in working together, I'll have links down below. But today I want to talk about this element of being a cycle breaker, something that I have been calling myself since the beginning of my healing journey, I would honestly say. And I realized that I was a cycle breaker. I actually didn't realize it until I was on my spiritual awakening journey, because it was more in the reflection of looking back at my childhood and realizing that I'm not willing to do things the way that they have been done. I am wanting to show up in a different way. I want to break certain patterns that I see being carried forward. And it's not from a space of wanting to disrespect or be in of spite of my parents or my lineage. I feel like when you're a true cycle breaker, it's almost like a calling that you feel, and you want to do things differently, not out of disrespect of how it's been done, but more so because you just see things in a different way and you want to show up and you want to be your authentic self. And a lot of that gets shut down maybe with the way things have been done. And I think that it's important to really know who you are and stand in that. And I think that being a cycle breaker is also not for the faint of heart. Hi, thank you so much for joining. We've got a few people live here. I'm just chatting about being a cycle breaker and my journey about that. So feel free to drop any questions or anything, and I will see them as they pop up. So I would say a lot of me realizing that this was my path was more like in retrospect. I didn't necessarily grow up knowing this. It was something that I realized on my healing journey, which I've been on in the last 9 years. And it was when I did a lot of inner child healing, and just as I would explore the dynamics between me and my parents, and realizing that I just had these different perspectives and a different approach to life, and I almost felt like they couldn't see my perspective or didn't understand where I was coming from. And I feel like a lot of the cycle breaker journey is navigating that feeling misunderstood. And for me, it's been a long journey with a lot of emotions toward my parents. In the beginning, there was a lot of anger, there was a lot of resentment, there was a lot of feeling unaccepted, unloved, especially from the people who told me growing up that they were the ones who loved and cared for me the most. That was really hard to feel like those people don't truly love you and accept you. And I think that it's not necessarily that they don't truly love you or accept you, but more so that you're bringing in a new way of doing things. You're presenting something that probably feels very threatening to the family system, and so that sparks up a lot and can be very activating for previous generations, especially when they've been taught to do things by a certain way and follow certain rules. And I think that in the newer generations, we're starting to question things. We're getting curious. Why are we doing things this way? Is this really the way that we're meant to do things? Is there another way? And I think that it's really important to stay true to ourselves, because you're always going to get that opposition. And if you don't know who you are and you're not anchored into that, it's going to be very easy to start to gaslight yourself and feel like maybe what they're saying is true. I know I've questioned that when I've had really challenging conversations with my parents. And ultimately, I landed in this space of the way that I'm going to get the most peace from this experience and in my life is going to be by accepting them as they are, by accepting that this is where they're at. And if you don't have that acceptance or peace, I just want to say that it is really hard to do that when you're feeling all the emotions of feeling misunderstood and maybe even exiled. It depends on your situation. But I think that's why like the inner work and making sure to come back to yourself and really getting clear on who you are is going to be the best thing to do, so that you can really show up. And when you do engage with your family as this cycle breaker, that you know what your role is and you're confident in that. So it doesn't matter what they have to say or what they're feeling, because they're probably not going to understand it, because that's not their role. Your role is going to be different in the family system than theirs if they don't understand where you're coming from. And I think a lot of healing work is actually coming to acceptance, because I see a lot of people, and I did this also in my journey, so I'm not like shaming anyone, but there's a lot of trying to bypass or trying to stay stuck in the blaming game, and I did that for a while and it felt really shitty to stay in that. And then it wasn't until I realized that I felt like they weren't accepting me, but then I also wasn't accepting them and where they're at. And I know it's like such a hard thing to wrap our head around, because we know ourselves and we know where our intentions are and where our hearts are at. And when other people aren't able to meet us there, it can be really challenging. The biggest advice that I can give to anyone who is navigating a challenging relationship with parents or other family members, it's not about you asking them to see your side or to agree with you, but it's about you being confident in yourself and cultivating that self-love and self-trust and appreciation, so that you're not outsourcing that to others. Because every time you try to outsource it and get the approval and the love from outside of yourself, you are giving your power away. And that's why the cycle breaker journey is not for the faint of heart, because you do get misunderstood. It's sometimes you almost even feel like, am I crazy for feeling this way? How are they not seeing this? Or why can't they understand me? And I think that the best thing you can do is to find community and people that are safe, whether that is your therapist or a friend or a partner, but a space where you can really be yourself and just express what you're feeling. When you cultivate a safe space and a community to be able to be yourself and to talk about these things that you're feeling, then you are showing yourself the evidence that what you're feeling about yourself is true. And it's okay that your blood family don't necessarily accept that or understand it, because there are other humans. We're beings of connection and community. We crave that, we need that, we're social creatures. And so I think for me, having community to be able to talk about those things and to be myself and show myself that it actually is, that it's accepted. It just may not be with the people who I grew up with, and that's okay. And I think too, understanding that every time we feel unaccepted, we may also be flipping that around to them as well and feeling like they should be a certain way, they should accept me. I know this is going so deep, but I feel like that got me in a cycle of even more frustration and less peace, until I got to the point of feeling so many emotions, feeling so much anger and resentment, and then reaching this breaking point where I felt like the only way that I can feel better about this is by just letting them be on their journey and honoring what feels true about me and my journey, because I think that's a big part of the cycle breaker journey, is that you are paving this new path and people are not going to understand. In fact, they may even look at you weird and say that you're doing all this stuff and question you as a person. And I think also having family members who you grew up with for so many years. In my case, it was over 20 years that I lived with my parents, and then having them tell me, "You've changed," blaming my partner for how I am, when I felt like I finally discovered who I was and had let Eva bloom. The thing I realized about that is they are looking at you from a certain perspective. You're a little girl or little boy or whatever gender, and they can't release that image of how they see you. So then they're always expecting you to be a certain way. And maybe even some parents, I feel like, too, will look at you as an extension of them. So if you go do something, then they don't agree with that, and then they feel like it looks bad on them, so then they get upset with you for doing that. And it's just like there's no sense of sovereignty in that. That's why I feel like it's so important to be able to communicate these things, but I know that it's not always easy to do that with the people in question that are involved. But I think for me, the most peace I found is when I can truly come from a space of they are going to live their lives, and I respect that. And if they never in this life accept me, I can live with that because I accept me. So I don't need them to accept me because I'm no longer looking for their approval. I can live with my own approval, and then anyone else who wants to appreciate me and connect to me and have a relationship is going to be cherry on top, but it's not the main entree. So I just feel like that understanding within myself was really helpful because it gave me back my power instead of always looking for that. And that pattern will show up in your partnership, in your job, if you're looking for that external validation and approval. So it's really important to work on that within ourselves, because that's the way to actually change the experience, to no longer be needing that external validation. What else do I want to say about being a cycle breaker? Yeah, find other cycle breakers who are on a similar path, who you can connect with. I would be careful with people who are constantly blaming their parents or whoever it is that they have a problem with, because I just feel like that keeps you stuck in the cycle. It doesn't actually bring peace to blame. I feel like it creates more internal disruption, because I think there's always going to be parts of us that want that acceptance and love. And if we sit in blame, we're cultivating grievances. Marianne Williamson had a interview with Oprah, and she was talking about how every night she was doing this practice when she first learned about the Course in Miracles, and she was asking herself, who does she have a grievance with? And then she would do some kind of forgiveness practice. And I think that regardless of whether you end up reconnecting and reconciling with your family or whoever, I think that the forgiveness practice is important just for us internally, and to be able to come back into center and know that we are living the way that feels right for us, and it's not intentionally harming anyone. And then doing the forgiveness allows that weight to drop on our end, but you're not doing it to have a certain result. You're not going into a healing session with the expectation of now this is gonna change everything in my relationship with my parents. You approach it with, I'm gonna do what's possible on my end, and then whatever they want to choose to do, they can. And if at some point we meet again, then great. And then if not, then that's where it's at. So just having that acceptance, but true acceptance, because there's also a lot of, I'm going to say that I accept or forgive you, but I don't truly feel that way. And I think that it's important to be really honest with ourselves. Do you actually truly feel the acceptance where you can be neutral, where you don't have an expectation of how they need to show up, and you can just be yourself and let them be themselves too? And there's one other thing I was gonna share. So there's a conversation with Bashar that was really powerful. You can go on YouTube here and type in Bashar with a B as in boy. And there was a woman expressing about having this really challenging dynamic with her family, and she was asking for some support and guidance. And the response from Bashar was, by your family being the way that they are, they propelled you into the direction that you ended up going. So for me, for instance, I saw certain ways things were, like with money and wealth consciousness and poverty consciousness. I saw the way my family was handling it, and I said, I don't want to do it that way. But what Bashar was talking about is by you seeing it and getting clear on that is not the way for me, that propels you then to go over here and do it the way that actually feels true for you. And so I think that that was a really important message that I had received at a time when I had a lot of emotions coming up around my parents, and I really needed to hear that. And the other message that really resonated from Bashar was, and this is something that I truly believe, that we all have a piece of the divine within us. And so everyone can connect to their higher self or intuition, whatever you call it. So by that logic, our family members, whoever we have these conflicts and challenging dynamics with, they also have this part of them, right? So all of us humans are equal in that sense. And it's this idea that maybe their human self, maybe their ego does not accept you or show love and appreciation for you, but their higher self does love you, does accept you, does see the path that you're on, and is supportive of that. And that was, I think, the most powerful message that I received that really helped me through a very challenging time with my parents, because it reminded me that yes, maybe their actions are from ego and from a space of unacceptance and not from their heart, but that part of them that sees what I'm doing, that understands, that higher self part still exists within them, and it does know, it does love me still. And that was really powerful to realize and to think about and keep reminding myself as well. In the entrepreneur space, cycle breaking looks like just doing it your way, giving yourself the permission to show up, to market, to structure, to create your own way, because everyone is going to tell you they have blueprints. But I think that the only blueprint that matters is the one that is in your heart and what feels resonant for you at this time. So I think we're all wanting more creativity, more authenticity. And I think that it's really important that we step more into that, and allow ourselves to freely express, even though it doesn't follow the blueprint that's always been done. And I think that that empowerment that we can give ourselves to show up and to do it our way, to really truly walk our path, and to know that you also have a whole spirit team that is supporting you and guiding you. I highly recommend doing ancestral healing if you have not explored that, because that has been one of the game changers for me, is connecting to ancestors, whether they are ones that you've met in this life or they go back generations before you were even born. It's important because they're part of your spirit team, and they can help you also with that healing of the family dynamics. I've heard messages from my ancestors that have really supported me and given me the perspective that was so beneficial at that time, so that I could move forward and feel empowered. And like I said, this path of being a cycle breaker, it does not come with a shortage of emotions, and really challenges your ability to build strength, to cultivate your resilience. I think that in the end, when we get to the point of transitioning from this earth, looking back at our time here, whether it was truly lived in a way that feels meaningful and fulfilling to us, versus we followed what we were told, we followed the rules, we appeased everyone else. I think that makes the difference between a fulfilling life and a life that is just performed, that is not true to us. And I don't know about you, but I personally want to live the alive, vibrant, fulfilled life. I want to feel like I made an impact, that I made a difference, and that I did it my way. And I want to support others to do the same.